Hello and welcome in, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Sparks from Arrowhead First, and this is your European League of Football Sunday Rundown. We're going to just share this here real quick. All right, and as we wait for that to get going, I want to thank you all for joining us. And I want to apologize that I have not been up early enough this morning to get in on most of the European football action for today because, I've been sick all weekend. But I still wanted to wake up and do this morning because this is something I really enjoy doing. This is, just football in general is a real big deal for me. All right. All right. So. Sorry, we're just sharing to our channels here. All right. Now that we've shared to our various channels, again, I want to apologize for not being here earlier. Been sick all weekend. And, this Memorial weekend is a big weekend for spring football. Of course, we had the UFL going on. And even though there's no playoff spots left to be decided in the UFL, we still had a lot of action going on there. Very exciting games. My Memphis Showboats lost again, so that's disappointing. But let's head over to European League of Football action because that's what we are here for. So, in the European League of Football, we have some early scores coming in from Saturday and then from Sunday. All right, so on Saturday, we had the Ferencváros Enthroners traveling to take on the Vienna Vikings. The Enthroners, one of the not great teams in the ELF, the European League of Football, and the Vienna Vikings, one of the better teams, the 2022 champions of the European League of Football. And this win is about as you would expect it to go. The Enthroners 15, the Vikings with a big win, 62-15. All right. Next up, the Hamburg Sea Devils, who made headlines this week. And the reason they made headlines is because they made a big addition at quarterback. The younger brother of Tua Tagovailoa, Talia Tagovailoa. So if you remember, he wanted to stay another year at Maryland last year, wasn't granted the extra year of eligibility. And so he thought he might go to the NFL draft, didn't get drafted, tried going to the CFL. That didn't work out, apparently. And now he is in the European League of Football. So this is one of the most high-profile quarterbacks that's been in the European League of Football in quite a while. And so I'm anxious to see how he does here. You think, these guys that did really well at like a Big Ten university, you really would think that they would do well in a league like this. But remember, Johnny Manziel was playing against what should have been way lower competition in the Alliance of American Football, and he still could not compete. So we'll see how that goes, right? It's just, it's always a toss-up how these quarterbacks are going to do, but we're anxious to see what's going to happen with with Tagovailoa, because yeah. Anyways, let's get back to the scores here. Give me just a second. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, and we're back. So, like we said, Hamburg had made headlines this week, and they're making even more headlines with a 15-point win over the Prague Lions. So the Hamburg Sea Devils, with that disappointing loss last week, they come back this week in week 2, get a big win over the Prague Lions. And then next up, the so sorry. Next up, the Frankfurt Galaxy, coming off a disappointing loss last week, now with a big win over the Madrid Bravos this week, right? The Madrid Bravos were a top contender coming into this week, and they just got taken down. Sorry, that was my daughter. They just got taken down by double digits by the Frankfurt Galaxy. And that seems kind of to confirm what we thought, right? That the Frankfurt Galaxy are a pretty good team, right? They just suffer these setbacks every once in a while. Next up, the Nordic Storm continue to roll on the back of quarterback Jadrian Clark. They had a big setback this week as they lost star running back Glenn Tawanga, but they made up for that with the fact that they have the likely MVP in Jadrian Clark. They're now 2-0 after a 40-21 win over a tough Wroclaw Panthers team. Finally, we see something we rarely see in the NFL, and that is in the ELF, is a low-scoring game. So the high-powered offense of the Stuttgart Surge against a Paris Musketeers offense that had some trouble getting going last week. Well, the Paris Musketeers end up shutting them out. Yes, you rarely ever see just a full shutout in the ELF, but we got 2 of them so far. And so Paris shut out the Surge and won 6-0 in one of the lower scoring games you're ever likely to see. It looks like we still got a couple of games going on. The Raiders to roll at the Helvetic Mercenaries. They're in the third quarter. No surprise, the Raiders are up by double digits in that one, 17-0 over the 0-1 Helvetic Mercenaries. The Raiders are also at 0-1, but the Raiders just a little bit different caliber of a team in this regard. Let's head back out and see our other game still in play here, the battle of 2 1-0 teams. It's the Berlin Thunder, quarterback by top-tier QB, Jacob Sullivan, and it's the Munich Ravens, right? Both sitting at 1-0. And so you would think that this would be, an easy win for the Berlin Thunder. They have that high-powered offense, but the Munich Ravens came to play. They're up 20-7 right now. Jacob Sullivan with 1 passing touchdown and 2 interceptions while taking 4 sacks. Meanwhile, the Munich Ravens, Tabor of the Ravens has 3 touchdowns to just 1 interception. So we'll take a quick break, and I'll get back to you. And after that brief break, we are back. So those are your scores so far. Let's get a little deeper into some of this action here. And let's run down some of the stats from these games. right? So, let's go all the way back to that Vienna Vikings Fehervar game. The Vienna Vikings now sitting at 2-0, and the Enthroners now sitting at 0-2. Like we said, this ticker really just doesn't quite function correctly all the time. It still registers that the game's going on, even though it's obviously not. But the most updated box scores we have had Brad Holmes of the Vienna Vikings with 4 touchdowns to just 1 interception, only 1 sack taken, and a really balanced rushing attack as Liedelbauer and Wigan both had over 90 yards rushing and a touchdown. Brad Holmes, the quarterback, had 55 yards, no touchdowns. And then a balanced receiving day as Torre, Schutz, and Horn all had north of 40 yards receiving, Horn and Torrey with 2 touchdowns apiece, right? And finally, they're keeping track of sacks this time. And looks like nobody doubled up on sacks, but you have 3 defenders with a sack apiece. So let's go to the other side and see how the Fehervar Enthroners did. So not necessarily a terrible performance by Doman, the quarterback from the Fehervar Enthroners. 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but the 4 sacks taken really makes that hard on a quarterback, right? They didn't get very much at all from their rushing game. Key and Bonatovic both combined for 55 yards total, right? And so when you're not getting much from your rushing attack, it really doesn't matter how well the rest of it goes. Zirok and Still, the top 2 receivers, with 87 yards and 76 yards, respectively, and a touchdown apiece. So, let's head out of there and let's head back to our other games. Second game of the week was the Hamburg Sea Devils, who now sit at 1-1. They beat the Prague Lions, who now sit at 0-2. The Prague Lions still struggling to get their footing in the ELF, right? So, for the Hamburg Sea Devils, Talia Tagovailoa not playing yet. And here's the kicker. The quarterback they do have, Mack, did not have a single touchdown. Only 14 passing attempts, 2 sacks taken, but their rushing game did it all. The running back, Candido, with 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kayi, the other running back, with 84 yards and a touchdown. And then Cruz with a short touchdown as well, right? That's 4 rushing touchdowns on the day. And that's a recipe to get it done. Even when Talia Tagovailoa gets here, you still want to lean on that rushing attack, especially if they're going to do that for you, right? Their top receiver only had 23 yards. So next to nothing there, 58 passing yards total, but still a dominant win over the Prague Lions. So let's look at the Lions, right? The Lions didn't have a terrible day passing. Smith went for 223 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But star wide receiver Willie Patterson had no touchdowns. And so, what are you going to do with that? Zuzeka went for 38 yards and no touchdown. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me back up. So, I completely misspoke here. Willie Patterson did have a touchdown. He had 78 yards receiving and a touchdown. Aside from that, here's where I got confused in the box score. Confused myself. Completely my fault. Willie Patterson also had 77 rushing yards, but no touchdowns. Willie Patterson is one of those do-it-all kind of wide receivers. We saw him doing that for the Bravos last year, and we see him doing it for the Prague Lions this year, but unfortunately it's not enough to make the leap when the rest of the team is not there. Decent receiving days all around. 78 yards for Willie Patterson, 67 yards for Zuzeka, and 58 yards for Biley, but it's just not getting it done. So we'll see. So that is a 28-13 win for the Hamburg Sea Devils, who go to 1-1. Frankfurt Galaxy and the Madrid Bravos both sit at 1-1 after a 47-33 victory for the Frankfurt Galaxy over Madrid. And this is a big deal because two 20-point quarters really launched this into the stratosphere for the Frankfurt Galaxy. In the first quarter and the third quarter, they had a combined 7 points, but in the second quarter and the fourth quarter, they had a combined 40 points. So this is what gets it done for him. Let's go to the stats. So for the Frankfurt Galaxy, we see that McKay goes for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception, right? That's not so great. That's not something that you're going to write home and tell mom about. But here's the thing that you are going to write home and tell mom about. 5 total rushing touchdowns. So we have 2 from Platzgummer, who added 248 yards on the ground to go with it. 2 from Mamain, who added 88 yards on the ground to go with it. And then the quarterback, McKay, had 72 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, right? Decent receiving day for Wright, Strumman, and Cavadia Lenhart, who all went over 50 yards receiving. Cavadia Lenhart with 1 receiving touchdown, Walter with the other receiving touchdown. So that is a big win for the Frankfurt Galaxy, right? That's a huge game on the ground. And the Frankfurt Galaxy have shown that when they can establish that rushing attack, they are a dangerous team. Heading over to the Madrid Bravos, they got a guy who's no stranger to spring football and Reed Sinet. And he actually had a decent day, 459 yards passing. That's quite good, right? But the 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions is what kind of held them back a little bit. Very little from their rushing attack. Their top rusher, 35 yards, right? Only 1 rushing touchdown to speak of. Receiving-wise, Cruikshank had a heck of a day, 198 yards and a touchdown. Flores Calderon had 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. So really good days receiving. Really decent day passing for Reed Sinet, but ultimately it just was not enough against this high-powered Frankfurt rushing attack. If you hear some noises back there, that's my daughter and my son playing, right? So let's head over to that Nordic Storm victory over the Wroclaw Panthers. And the Nordic Storm, really kind of the surprise, I would say. The surprise of the league so far, right? Expansion teams don't typically do so great, but they managed to get an MVP quarterback, and they're doing quite well. So let's look at how that MVP quarterback did. Another huge day for Adrian Clark, as he went for 303 yards and 5 passing touchdowns, took 3 sacks. Rushing-wise, you have Kennedy Channing going for 98 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Receiving-wise, you have Bo Bulio with 151 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I want to go back to that rushing attack because Kennedy Channing taking over for top-tier running back Glenn Twanga, who tore his ACL out for the season. And Kennedy Channing steps right in, has a big day, right? Not a Glenn Twanga day, but still a big day. And then wide receiver Bo Bulio steps up for the receiving game. Just 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, absolutely enormous day. 2 other receiving touchdowns from besides, one from Phones, one from Patella. And the defense got it done too. Bosom with 2 sacks, Mirren with a sack, right? So just an all-around good day from the Nordic Storm. Let's see how it went for the Wroclaw Panthers. Irons really just struggled today. 20 of 30 passing, that's not so bad, but 181 yards through the air, just 1 touchdown, no interceptions, but 5 sacks taken, which is huge. Now, Irons, while he struggled through the air, excelled on the ground. Irons would go for 119 yards on the ground. No touchdowns, but still 119 rushing yards from a quarterback. Pretty great, while Brzezowski had 5 rushing attempts for just 3 yards. And so you could tell Irons is trying to do as much as he can, but it's hard when you don't have a lot of help. Brzezowski was the only one to get a receiving touchdown, 38 yards to the air, 1 touchdown. That defense just could not get a lot of pressure, right? 3 sacks, but really not a lot going on there. Only 2 pass breakups between the defense. So, big win for the Nordic Storm. They go to 2-0. The Wroclaw Panthers go to 1-1. Let's look at this Stuttgart Surge Paris Musketeers game. So Stuttgart goes to 1-1. Paris goes to 1-1. They're tied. And at the ending of this game, right, for the Stuttgart Surge, Riley Hennessy had 225 yards from the air, but he goes 19 of 39 passing. That's about 50% right there. No touchdowns, no interceptions, only 45 yards on the ground for their top rusher, Aweo. Owayo also their top receiver with 89 yards, but again, no touchdowns, right? No scoring from this high-powered Stuttgart Surge offense. And you really expect more from Riley Hennessy and his guys. Let's look at the Paris Musketeers, and we really want to look at that defense, but we're going to start with the offense. Henderson, no big day to speak of. Only 16 pass attempts, 113 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 4 sacks taken, right? So that Stuttgart defense got after the quarterback. Kandar had 76 yards, but on 18 attempts, so only about 4 yards per carry. Mitchell had 73 receiving yards, but no receiving touchdowns. They're leading. They only had 1 receiving touchdown between them, which was from Bertellen. But this defense here, right, you have 3 guys on this defense with 10 tackles, and then your 4th guy has 8. So that's 38 tackles just between your top 4 guys. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 sacks, right? You have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total pass breakups. So just an excellent performance from this Paris Musketeers defense. And after Zach Edwards, going his separate ways from the team, they're going to have to rely on this defense. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back here on the ELF Sunday Rundown from Bam Blitz Network. And we're back once again. All right. So we just finished breaking down the Stuttgart Surge at the Paris Musketeers. And now we are caught up with our live games. And our 2 live games we have on right now, the Helvetic Mercenaries heading from Switzerland over to Innsbruck, Austria to take on the Raiders Tyrol, and the Berlin Thunder heading to Munich to take on the Ravens. Let's check in on some of these scores. So last we checked, the Raiders Tyrol were 17-0 over the Helvetic Mercenaries. They've now extended that to 24-0. Meanwhile, the Munich Ravens are up 20-7 on the Berlin Thunder. So let's see if we can get to that game, if it'll let us. This website is very fun. Let's go to games. All right, here we go. So, Raiders Tyrol up 24-0 over the Helvetic Mercenaries. Let's get our most updated box scores here. So, if you guys didn't know, you have 2 different Platzgummers in the European League of Football. You have one that's a running back and one that's a quarterback, right? And so just when I say Platzgummer, don't be thinking the running back, right? So the Raiders Tyrol not doing much in the passing game today, and they're not really needing to. So Platzgummer only has 7 total passing attempts, only 2 completions for 24 yards and 1 sack taken. But what's happening is Tony Bonatti, who was especially effective last year in short yardage situations, really just showing out today, averaging 15 yards per rush, 12 attempts, 186 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. So it has been all ground attack for the Raiders so far. Absolutely insane. Checking in on the Helvetic Mercenaries, they've used 2 different quarterbacks today, right? But the primary one has been Weed, who is about 50% on the day, 69 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, but no sacks taken. On the ground, they're not doing nearly as well. Tony Bavell, their leading rusher, has 12 attempts for 40 yards, 3.33 yards per carry. And then their next 2 rushers have 28 yards and -4 yards. So, once again, 24-0 deep into the third quarter. The Raiders Tyrol at home, winning against the Helvetic Mercenaries. The Raiders Tyrol looking to go 1-1. The Helvetic Mercenaries looking to go 1-1 as well, but looking like they are going to go 0-2. Let's head over here to the Munich Ravens at the Berlin Thunder, and it looks like it's still 20-7 here. So let's get you caught up on some box scores for that. The Munich Ravens, Tabor is having a day so far, right? 12 of 16 passing, very efficient, 107 yards. That's not too like, doesn't jump off the page at you, I'd say, but 3 touchdowns to just 1 interception and 73 yards on the ground to go with it. So Tabor's having quite the day for the Munich Ravens here. Receiving wise, wide receiver Stanley has 63 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then Moore has 3 yards but has that other touchdown, right? On defense, they have 3 sacks so far, and we're just into the third quarter here. And so that seems to be the difference, right? Putting a lot of pressure on the Thunder and Jacob Sullivan. Jacob Sullivan, of course, you'll remember, had that huge day passing last week. I think it was 7 touchdowns, right? Well, he's got 1 as we head into the third quarter here. He's got 26 passing attempts, 17 completions, 188 yards to the air. Not a terrible day, but that 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, the 4 sacks taken, those are really hampering him, right? Of course, he's getting nothing from his rushing attack as well. He's the second leading rusher, and he has 3 total rushing yards. Adams, his running back, only has 11 rushing yards, averaging 2.75 yards per carry. Goggin is helping him out through the air, and so is Shum, right? Goggin has 74 yards. Shum has 57 and a touchdown, but it's just not enough of a team effort right now, and just 1 sack to speak of. So let's look at the standings here, if we can find them. Heading over to the ELF standings. All right, so starting with the East Division, we have the Vienna Vikings on top at 2-0. We have the Wroclaw Panthers at 1-1, and then the Fehérváron Throners and the Prague Lions both bringing up the bottom of the division at 0-2. Fehérváron Throners and Prague Lions really have struggled to find their footing in this league over the past couple of years. In the North Division, you have the Nordic Storm leading at 2-0. Looks like the Rainfire are off this week. Berlin Thunder looking like they're possibly going to go 1-1 and be tied with the Hamburg Sea Devils for second place in the division. And of course, the Rainfire are still going to be, depending on how you calculate it, right, are still going to be in last place simply by the virtue of the fact that they've only played 1 game. The Munich Ravens looking very likely to go to 2-0, so that'll be a big deal for them. The Madrid Bravos sitting at 1-1, and it looks like they're going to be tied with the Raiders Tyrol at 1-1 when this day is over with. This here is in the South Division, by the way. The Helvetic Mercenaries look like they're going to stick to the bottom of the division at 0-2. In the West Division, finally, we have the Stuttgart Surge that are going to be at 1-1. They're going to be tied with the Frankfurt Galaxy and the Paris Musketeers, who are at 1-1 as well. And I feel like we had a Cologne Centurions game going on, but maybe not. No, maybe, you know what? Maybe we have a couple teams on a bye week. I think we got the Rainfire and the Cologne Centurions on a bye week this week. But anyways, that's how your standings shake out. Let's get back into these games, see if we are into the fourth quarter yet. I don't want to go there. Come on.
This one's for you. Yeah. The second straw is for you. What? The second straw is for you.
Those are my kids.
The big one?
So,
No, this one.
let's get to the play-by-play here. And oh my goodness, this thing. All right, so Terrell Raiders currently with the ball. Just took a penalty. So Marco Schneider trying to run to the right 5 yards, the Raiders 25, but they're tackled by Jan Hinder, penalty pass interference on the Mercenaries, 13 yards. That's going to pick up the Raiders a first down. And we are deep into the third quarter here. So it was 2nd and 9 at the Raiders 20. Now it's going to be 1st and 10 at the Raiders 33-ish, right? Oh, we just jumped up a ways. All right, so now we're caught up. And now the Raiders are facing 3rd and 7 at their own 41, trying to cross the 50 here, trying to get yet another score on these Helvetic Mercenaries, right? And again, big day from the running back Bonatti today. So this is what you like to see if you're a Raiders Terrell fan. Both the Raiders Terrell and the Frankfurt Galaxy riding that rushing attack so far. Heading back over to the Berlin Thunder, visiting the Munich Ravens. The Thunder just trying to get anything going here. Heading over to the play-by-play. We are looking at a 2nd and 3. And we'll take a quick break. And we're back. So, we were, when we left, looking at the third quarter. Maybe into the fourth quarter now. Nope, still in the third quarter of the Munich Ravens taking on the Berlin Thunder. That game is still 20-7. Berlin, I cannot see. Berlin driving, right? So they're on the verge of scoring right now, and it's 20-7. But if Berlin can get a touchdown here, that really gets them back in this game. And we know this Berlin offense can take off really quick, so that they can get 7 points here, make this 14-20. This is going to be a really interesting game going into this fourth quarter. Meanwhile, over at the Helvetic Mercenaries taking on the Raiders in Innsbruck, Austria. This is not such an interesting game. Wish it was, but here we are, right? So, deep in the third quarter. Why is that not updating? I really have no idea. So, it went backwards for some reason. This ticker is nonsense sometimes. But anyways, we should be nearing the end of the third quarter here, maybe into the fourth quarter already, and the Raiders have a commanding lead in this one. The Helvetic Mercenaries really just cannot get anything going here. Remember, their quarterback here, 14 of 25, 131 yards. That's just fine. but no touchdowns and interception, and they're not getting a ton out of their rushing game either. Meanwhile, the Raiders are barely even having to throw the ball. 8 total attempts, just 3 completions, no touchdowns, no interceptions through the air, but Bonatti leading the way with 186 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And so it's Bonatti and basically nobody else, right? So you just want to look at a scoring summary here, if I can. Sorry, just looking through here, seeing what's happening. Okay. Tobias Bonatti. All right, so the Toronto Raiders had to punt. Should be almost into the fourth quarter right now. Oh, yeah, look. The Helvetic Mercenaries got a score. So, let's okay. Ticker's a little behind, but how that score came about was quarterback Isaiah Weed passing to the right to Ishmael Schmidt for 14 yards and a touchdown. So the Helvetic Mercenaries get on the board. I don't know if it's going to be enough at this point, still down 18 points, but, points are better than no points. So we'll see how that's going. The Birdland Thunder sort of capitalized on that big drive, actually had to settle for a field goal there. So it's 20-10 in favor of the Munich Ravens. That's not what you want to see late in the third, probably heading into the fourth here in just a minute. So, So again, Tabor having the better day of the 2 quarterbacks, which is surprising. 107 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, just 1 interception, and adding 73 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, Sullivan, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks taken, and he's his team's second leading rusher with 2 yards rushing. So that's not great. That's not really what you want to see, right? But there we are. The Helvetic Mercenaries desperately trying to get anything going here, trying to get this ball back against the Raiders to roll and make this thing a game as we head into the fourth, but it's just not looking like it's their day.